Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of One Mic where I watch it so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about the final 5 episodes of the Amazon Prime original series, Them. So I recorded 2 videos a little while back, one for episodes 1 and 2 and another for episodes 3 through 5. I didn't know how I was gonna consume this show, so I just said, whenever I watch more episodes, I'll put a video out. I ended up watching, I think, 6 and 7 in a night, and then 8, 9, and 10. But just the way things played out with other videos I was putting out at that time and other things that took place in my personal life, I just didn't get around to actually recording the videos. Once I was done with the whole show, I decided that it would probably be a good time for me to not necessarily focus on episodes 6 through 10, but to kind of talk about my thoughts on the series as a whole, because this has been one of the most difficult shows for me to assess. And it's not because of the controversial scenes and the things that might be a little bit tough to stomach. It's more so because this show does some things. This show makes some mistakes along the way. It has some scenes and some issues that I don't particularly care for, or that I feel could have been better. But then at the same time, this show does some phenomenal work in other ways that I think is being lost because people are upset about the graphic nature of the racism in this show. And we see a lot of this kind of stuff, particularly lately, with what you might see on Twitter or refer to as, like, black torture porn or something like that. And I understand that, and I understand how that can be frustrating. But even if you were to consider this show to be, torture porn, and you go, I'm not here for this, that's fine. If you can't stomach it, I don't even want to say if you can't stomach it, because it makes you sound weak. But if it's something that you choose to not watch because it's just not your cup of tea, that's fine. But what I don't like is when people go, this is gratuitous, this is too much, this is a bad show. One thing I will say up front, this is unequivocally not a bad show. If you say this is a bad show, you are demonstrably wrong. This is not a bad show. This show had moments in practically every episode that made me internally want to stand up and give a standing ovation. Stuff that a lot of the shows that people praise nowadays are not capable of pulling off. So to call this a bad show is just wrong. It's not a bad show. I could say that definitively. What I can't say is whether or not I can recommend it to you, because it's something that, like, it's oh man, it's so divisive. And it's not divisive in a bad way, in the sense of, like, like politics are divisive. It's divisive in the sense of the things that I don't like about it are not necessarily reasons to not recommend it. The reasons to not recommend it are things that I don't even consider in my assessment of the show, like as far as, like, the graphic nature of some of the scenes, or whether or not these scenes are a little bit harder on the viewer. I don't, I might look at that and think, okay, is this scene too much for me? Is this scene too much for others? And I might look at it through that lens, but not necessarily through this determines whether or not this is a good or bad show, or whether or not it should be recommended. And then there's stuff in the show that's just phenomenal, man. So, like, I want to get into, rather than breaking down 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I want to just talk about, and I'm going to limit this to just events that take place in the back half of the season. So I'm not going to cover anything that I already talked about regarding the first 5 episodes, but I do want to talk about some of the things that I liked, some of the things that I didn't like, and just give my thoughts on I think the show as a whole. So I'm going to start with some of the things that I didn't like. Episodes 6 through 10 had a couple of things that didn't just bother me, but bothered me within as it pertained to my expectations for what I should be getting throughout the rest of the series. So, in the first 5 episodes, and in the videos that I made covering the first 5 episodes, I questioned, I wanted to learn more about these individual demons that appear to be haunting each individual family member. I was expecting to get a pretty satisfying explanation. Like, I want to know who these people are, why are they haunting each individual specifically? Those sorts of things. Where'd they come from? And we only got like just a little bit of that. And I would have liked to have learned way more about Miss Vera. I would have liked to have learned way more about what's her name, Doris, the white girl that was haunting Ruby. I would have loved to have learned way more about. I paused to find out his name. He's in the credits as the Tap Dance Man, which is the blackface character that haunts Henry. I would have loved to have learned more about him, but more on that later. We did learn more about him than a couple of the others. But then we got a whole episode about the man in the black hat, who we found out his name is Epps. We got a whole episode 9, which is I just want to say like a quick diversion from my point. I always find it odd, and I've seen this on multiple shows where we'll just say hypothetically this is a 10 episode run where episode 8 ends like the penultimate episode, and then episode 9 tells a story that is completely different from the current timeline of events. It's necessary, but it's almost like the show is making you wait to see how the current day timeline ends. And I thought that was an interesting decision to make on this show, particularly with Epps getting a full episode, as opposed to like, I don't know shit about Doris. Like, I don't know anything about like who she is or where she came from, why this person particularly is haunting Ruby. I can make a lot of assumptions about it, but not a lot of stuff that the show told me. And I'm kind of in a place where I'm kind of, I don't want to say okay with what I have regarding these specific demons, but I just wish there had been more. I especially with like Miss Vera, because there's in the finale, Gracie kills Vera by simply tearing up a page in her book, and I'm like, one, why did that work? And then two, how did she know that would work? Like I think all of those, the endings for each of the demons in the final episode was unsatisfying to me. I didn't like the ending for Miss Vera. I really hated the one for Epps. Like the whole thing with Lucky going down into the basement and they have like this long drawn out conversation, and like it went on way too long. It was boring. It made very little sense. It wasn't poorly done in the sense of like everything here is dumb or this is just is completely wild. It was just uninteresting. It just wasn't compelling. I didn't like the end of that at all. I didn't like the end for the Tap Dance Man either, even though, the scene before that was phenomenal. His last scene prior to his death scene was phenomenal, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. And then the way that ended for Doris as well, she kind of like manifests into Lucky, and then Lucky actually shows up and kind of like talks Ruby down. Like these are all very unsatisfying endings for characters. For demons who have haunted these characters throughout the course of the series. So I had a little bit of issues with that, but not anything that's just that bothered me too much. But it was something that I would have liked more of. Like I wish I could have gotten not necessarily a full episode on each one, but like a strong, good like background flashback segment, something similar to what they did with Epps, which I thought that was a strong episode, by the way. But I just wish we could have gotten a little bit more for the other characters that were haunting the family. One of the other things that I didn't like is how the storyline with Betty ended. They played her relationship with the milkman George to have a lot of underlying sexual tension, and they were meant to lead us into a direction that's going to say these two are going to have an affair, and it goes completely left, which is fine. It doesn't have to lead toward an affair. That could be a pump fake or whatever. But I just feel like I don't know why the decision was made to have George become like this psychopathic like kidnapper who puts her in this bunker and is like going to like essentially own her, like making George a complete psychopath. Like I don't really understand what that served as far as the main storyline of this show and what they're trying to convey, the messages that the show is trying to tell us. Why they chose to go, let's completely take this relationship as far left as we can possibly take it. And I don't really know why they did that. I found it to be a very unsatisfying direction for Betty's character to go. And then I also found her ultimate escape from this underground bunker where she stabs him in the neck with a corkscrew and he just goes, all right, I see that, and I'll leave you to think about it. Like gets up and walks off. And then he later shoots her, and he's got nothing but a Band-Aid on his neck. And I'm like, Oh man, you're really killing me with this one. Like he didn't react at all to the corkscrew. Like he shoots her. He's just got a band-aid on his neck. Like this guy should be bleeding out, man. But again, I that's one of those things where it's like I kind of can. I don't want to say let it go. I made note of it. It's something that I didn't like, but I'm not gonna look at this is a terrible show because George survived this corkscrew stabbing. It's a bad scene and a bad direction for that character, but it wasn't something that would make me necessarily say don't watch this show either. Um, One of the things that I found, another thing that I found to be a little clunky as far as like how they delivered it was, I believe in the start of episode 8, I want to say, after Henry finds the bones of Chester in this box that Lucky had been keeping. That's the end of episode 7. Like he finds these bones in this wrapped up in this blanket. And then episode 8 opens with her in a mental hospital. I'm like, whoa, we really jumped far ahead. Like, I mean, it's I can, in retrospect, like as the episode played out, I can look back and go, okay, well, I could see how one would end up in a mental hospital given what happened. But this is a show that is played out where, we're seeing a day at a time or something to that effect. So to go from closing one episode to we're in the backyard at night, I've just, we're about to bail, and I've just discovered that my wife is keeping, the bones of our dead child in this box to the start of the next episode, and she's just like strapped down. Like, I'm like, man, we really it felt like a very far leap in a show that's only giving us like hours at a time. It's like, next episode is the next day, so assuming that you would go from one day to the next, and I don't know if that's how those specific episodes were titled, but assuming you're going from one day to the next, give or take, I have trouble believing that in the morning she's instantly in a mental hospital. Like, I don't know. I felt like that was a little bit of a leap. If you guys don't agree, let me know. But I don't know, that kind of jump to just, okay, now she's in a mental hospital when like there's so many other things that have happened to this family that would be cause for concern. But it's that moment that we just shoot all the way to mental hospital. There's no conversations. There's no, what do we do about her? There's no showing her seeming crazy. Like, it's just like, I mean, from their perspective, she might seem not even crazy, but like reckless, like running around waving a gun. That doesn't make you crazy. That just makes you, unable to control your anger. But, they can look at it and be like, okay, she's saving these bones. That might be evidence that she's completely off the wall. But I'd like to see some of that. Like, I'd like to see that progression to where it makes sense to me that she should be in a mental hospital. And it really didn't, like, at least not in the time in the 5 to 7 seconds between the end of that episode and the start of the next one. I would have liked to see a little bit more. So that's really the end of what I didn't like. I'd say the biggest issue I had was with the lack of fleshing out of, no pun intended, of the mystical demons. That was probably my biggest issue with the show, combined with the twist that Betty's storyline took. The graphic scenes, while difficult to watch at times, they're not something where I'm going to say, hey, makes it a bad show. It's just one of those things where, like, if you can't stomach that sort of stuff, you shouldn't watch it. And that's pretty much the worst I can say. But what I do want to do is I want to talk about a lot of what I did like about this show. And there is a lot to like, which is, again, why I say, if you say this is a bad show, you are wrong. You are incorrect. It is not a bad show. You might not like it. You might hate it. Like, I hate what they're showing, how they're showing this black family. I hate what's happening to them. I don't like hey, if you don't like it, cool. But if you say it's a bad show, you have no clue what you're talking about, because this show had some moments and some scenes that I have not seen in any other kind of show. Like, I mean, this show had some phenomenal scenes. I'm going to run off a couple of the scenes that I thought were really compelling. My favorite scene, probably in the entire show, was the scene where Henry, this actor, I think his name's Ashley Thomas, something to that effect. Did I write this down? I can't remember if I wrote down what his name, his actual name. Yeah, I did. Ashley Thomas. This actor, every time he was on the screen, he was remarkable. Like, this guy was amazing. And I hate the fact that this show is so kind of under the radar and so maligned by so many people who didn't like the graphic nature of it, that it's probably going to stop this guy from getting the recognition that he deserves. Because this guy, man, did he crush it. And I think it's episode 8 or 7. I think it was 7. He has a conversation in the diner with the tap dance man, where the tap dance man tells a story about how he lost his fingers. My God, what an amazing scene. Like, what phenomenal acting. The guy who plays the tap dance man, again, same thing I have to say for Henry. It's a shame he's probably not going to get the recognition he deserves, because that guy absolutely crushed it every single time he was on the screen. He was terrifying. He was captivating. Like, this guy was incredible. And that scene when he's telling that story about these peaches, oh my gosh, like, just an amazing scene. Probably my favorite scene in the show. Right ahead of the pie scene at the end of episode 2, which, as I said in that video, that scene was ruined, but it was ruined from a place of perfection. Like, it's like, okay, this scene would have been a 10, but you did blank, and now it's like a 9.5 instead of a 10. And my frustration with the scene is that it could have been a 10 and wasn't. But because that, I bumped that down to number 2 because I have no complaints about this diner scene. Like, there's a great moment where the tap dance man laughs, and they laugh simultaneously and slam their hands on the table like old black people do when they're laughing, just slapping the knees and slapping the table. They slam their hands on the table, and it cuts to a profile shot from far away of Henry sitting at the table by himself, and then all the people in the restaurant looking at him. Like, and then he says something like, the tap dance man says, I don't remember what he says, but he goes from like that kind of like cheerful, kind of like, oh, we was picking the peaches, and it, like, talking in that kind of a Sambo blackface kind of way, and gets instantly pissed off, and like, those are all, he says something like, shut up before I kill you, or something like that. And it's like, it's jarring when he flips that switch like that. He does it again in the finale, and it's incredible, man. Absolutely love that scene. The finale scene with the tap dance man and Henry in the theater, another great one. That same dynamic happens again. Not quite as good as the diner scene, but they're making Henry watch what happened to him when he left that day, and then the day that Lucky was attacked. And man, what a scene. And then they call back to the diner scene, because the diner scene, he says something to the effect of like, Henry's never in the right place at the right time. Something like that. Like, you always never in the right place at the right time. And then he comes back, and in the theater scene, he was like, oh, but you were adamant about getting to that theater because you wanted to get that popcorn. And that day you were going to be in the right place at the right time. And then that's when what happened to Lucky happened. And man, what a scene. What a scene. You can't have scenes like that on a bad show. You're just not. You're not going to see that on, I don't know, whatever bad show might come to mind that you may or may not like. There's a really great shot in the finale, I believe, as well, when Henry's about to shoot one of the 3 racist guys that's been bothering him the whole season. The wife comes out. She's pregnant. She calls him the N-word. He looks like he's about to kill this guy. And she's standing there, and then like it's I don't know if this was, I have to watch it again. I don't know if it was CG, or if it was some sort of trickery, or if it was just perfectly framed. I don't know, but she's standing like straight ahead looking at him, and then from behind her, the tap dance man comes out like this. And it was so perfect that like you don't see him beforehand, and he just leans from behind her, and it's like, oh my God, what a great shot. What a great moment that was. He's like tapping on her belly with like his missing fingers. Like, oh my God, crushed it. Ruby got a chance to really shine in the second half of the season as well. Great scene where she's letting Doris convince her that they're gonna go like try out, practice for like cheerleading, and she's imagining that she's dancing with like doing her cheerleading in front of like with all the other white girls at the school, and then it pulls back or something like that, and you see she's just like by herself doing this routine, and then she like later says something like she doesn't want to be ugly anymore, she wants to look like Doris. Incredible thing to have like a dark-skinned woman, a dark-skinned girl telling another girl, I want to look like you because you're white and you're pretty, and I'm dark-skinned and that makes me ugly because my skin is dark. That was enough. And then she goes and dips her hand in paint, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna paint herself white. And not only did she do that, but they take it a step farther and have her like perform these cheerleading moves drenched in paint in front of the school. Like, oh my God, like crazy stuff. Again, this is not stuff that happens on a bad show. Another great scene when Lucky goes to visit the woman who lived in the neighborhood before they did, that went crazy and like killed her family or something like that. She's in the mental institution, and we see some of her backstory, and she like kills her family with bleach. Like that was an incredibly like troubling and shaking scene, as was the scene with where when Henry does discover the bones. Like that was a pretty traumatic scene too. So really great stuff there. The show, in addition to just being replete with like just really just top-notch acting, top-notch scenes, like you have phenomenal work being done with the lighting and the camera, cinematography done to perfection to maximize tension, like incredibly stressful, incredibly suspenseful, tension-filled show. They did a great job with lighting on this show to really aid in that. The music was on point all the time. Anytime there was a song started playing, it was like, it just felt right. It felt like the right song to play at that time. Yeah, so I feel like there's so much to love here. The visual look of it, the show looks amazing. The cinematography, the lighting, all that good stuff, done to perfection to maximize tension. It has a lot of tension, a lot of suspense, a lot of stress in it. The acting performances are phenomenal, top to bottom, for the family at least. The racist people, like they did a great job as well, but they weren't often given like these moments to where like this is your character's chance to really show out, so make sure you crush it. Like the racist people didn't quite get that, but they did a great job as well, because hey, I hated them, so hey, job well done. But each family member had some really great moments, but man, like I feel like the show is about Lucky. I mean, we see Lucky, she's the one who brings her family back from the brink in the finale. She's the one who defeats Epps at the end. Everything is revolved around Lucky and her trauma. But man, like this Ashley Thomas guy who played Henry, like my God, this guy, what an amazing performance this guy did on this show. I just can't get over. Like, my favorite scenes involve him. The way he plays with his facial expressions and his physicality to show this pinning down of rage, like all this rage that he has inside that he wants to let out and can't. Like the way he almost, when he gets into that rage mode that's often prompted by the tap dance man, he almost becomes ape-like in demeanor. Like he gets hunched, he gets like bigger. Like it's such, he was great in every way that you can be great in acting. Like he had incredibly powerful sad scenes. He had incredibly scary scenes. He had just this guy did it all from face to voice to body. He just crushed it, man. Like, and again, I know the show is about Lucky, and I know everyone is probably gonna look at this as like Lucky's show, but for me, Ashley Thomas, the guy that played Henry, he's the star of the show for me. So I'm gonna wrap this up by simply saying that if the graphic nature of the violence or the racism is too much for you, and you feel like you can't stomach this, is particularly, I've seen people who's like, oh, I watched episode 1. I don't know if I can really deal with this show. If you can't make it through episode 1, stop. It's only going to get worse for you. So don't go any farther. But, there's a lot of things to not like. If that could be something that troubles you, you can be troubled by any of the number of things that I found to be, poor directions to take the story. Things that could have been explained more, that should have been explained more, that weren't. We can talk about those things, ad nauseum. But I think that, not ad nauseum, because there is a limit to how much negative you can say about the show from a technical perspective. But from a visceral, just like, how does this show make you feel? I enjoyed watching it from a. Not because I'm like, I enjoy seeing racism or I enjoy seeing horrible things happening, but what I do enjoy is watching something where I know at any moment I could see something incredible. And this show did that in every episode, where I felt like I could see an incredibly powerful scene at any moment, and practically every episode had one. And that's why it's difficult for me to find myself in a position to say you should watch this or you should not watch this, because I don't know how you can handle the high levels of violence or troubling imagery on here. But I can say, if you can stomach that, there is some incredibly rewarding scenes and some phenomenal work being done on this show. So while it can be tough to stomach, and while it does have its issues, it's far from perfect. When this show is firing on all cylinders, which it does far more often than not, it does a remarkable job. So if you think you can stomach it, watch the show. It will be rewarding on an incredibly high level, but you will have to trudge through some shit that's gonna really fuck with you, and it's gonna be tough. And it's up to you whether you're willing to make that sacrifice and push through. I think the issues with the show are too few to even be mentioned as in the context of whether or not you should watch the show. So it really just boils down to, are you willing to stomach some of the tougher scenes to get some of these other remarkable scenes that I've referenced? If you are, check it out. If you're not, it is what it is. You won't be seeing it. But one thing I won't tolerate is people saying it was a bad show, because it is not a bad show, not by any stretch of the imagination. I will be around if this continues, as it's supposed to be an anthology series. If this continues and it gets another season, I will watch it and I will cover it on this show. So if that happens, I will see you then. If not, watch the show, don't watch the show. I don't know, make your determination, but subscribe, drop in the comments, tell me what you thought. Tell me what you think about what I thought. Are you in on a season 2? Let me know. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.